Welcome to the Spunky Spirit Podcast. I'm your host, Psychic Medium Carrie Muggs. This is where we learn all things spirit, everything from spiritual gifts, awakenings, ghosts, aliens, and starseeds. Nothing is untouchable, but always fun and spunky. I am honored to be on this spiritual journey with you, so make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Spunky Spirit. This week we're going to talk about fear and how it affects us. Now, you can put this with anxiety sometimes, but most of this episode I'm going to talk more about the fear part of it. But first, I want to tell you some upcoming things. Honestly, you guys know I don't get on social media a whole ton. I do Carrie Connects on there every Monday. I do Friday Funnies on Instagram. I focus a lot of my stuff on my Patreon. So if you want to, I'll leave the link down below. But for $5 a month, you can join my launch program, which you get a book of the month, community, meditations, monthly meditations. You get a monthly message from Spirit, and you get a weekly reading. So not just Carrie Connects, but this is a more in-depth reading. And then the next tier is Ascend for $10. And this one, you get all the things that I mentioned above, plus you get question and answers, Coffee with Carrie every month, like for an hour. And also I'm starting to do spirit circles a little bit. But I think that is going to, in my next tier, in the Transcend tier, you get all of those. Plus you get monthly moon ceremonies, full moon ceremonies with a moon reading, sound baths, workshops, and quarterly readings. So I will leave the link to my Patreon down there. It's awesome. It's an awesome group. And also, too, all of my courses and classes that are available are on my website. I have an awesome awakening class that helps you get through the basics of your spiritual awakening, helps you know the basics of what's going on, things like chakras, spirit guides, protection. There's like 8 different, an 8-week program. Every week sends you something different. And coming up will be my mediumship program online. It won't be just available at my office in Idaho Falls. It will also be available online. So you can find all that stuff on my website, except for Patreon. I should put it on my website, but you can also find that in the show notes down below. So today we're going to talk about fear. The reason why I'm talking about fear is because it can paralyze people. And sometimes people don't even understand that they have it. It can come across as anxiety. It really can. Fear can stop people in their tracks. There's a lot of different types of fears, and we're going to every fear that you have goes to a basic core fear. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. But the fear in itself the definition of fear is unpleasant emotion. It's an unpleasant emotion caused by a belief. Belief that something is dangerous, likely to cause pain or threat to you. Now, a lot of the times, I want to give the comparison. There is a real difference between fear and danger. We feel fear about a lot of different things. Danger is completely different. When you are in danger or when your life is being threatened, it really can go back to, one of the basic fears is the fear of dying. But danger is different. If you feel it in your bones, danger is a huge intuitive type of thing. So kind of know that there's danger is very real. Fear can be made up in your head. Fear is real, but where it comes from or stems from can be stories made up within your head. So our ego, if you don't know what our ego is our voice in our head. I named mine Emma. That tells us we're not good enough. That tells us that people will think we're stupid. That tells us that we shouldn't do this. Our ego, a lot of people think that our ego is negative, and it's not. We need our ego. Our ego keeps us safe. Our ego keeps us comfortable. Our ego likes to just be in a comfortable, safe position, and so our ego will try and stop us from adventuring or going out because our ego wants to keep us. The job of the ego is to keep us safe. And so our egos will sometimes tell us things to make us scared and make us afraid. So we won't, and an ego is pretty much, our alter selves that kind of stop us from doing, well, they don't really, ego's hard to explain, but a lot of people think that they're bad, but it's not. We really do need our ego. We have to become friends with our ego. So our ego has been a lot of shadow work, a lot of fears, but the truth is, instead of ignoring our ego and hiding our ego, we need to become friends with it and work with it and become friends with our ego. So fear and ego is healthy. It's not healthy if it consumes us and it stops us from what I call the adventures of life. If our fear stops us in our tracks and makes us so we don't do things, or makes us so we stop doing things, then that's when it becomes a problem. But the thing that's interesting about fear is that it's an emotion that we sometimes create ourselves. That it's just not, now danger's different. Danger's like when we are in danger or someone is threatening us. If you're walking in alone in an alley, that's dangerous. So there's, that could be fear. But fear itself is an emotion that we create. We are only born with two fears: the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. That's it. Those are the fears we're born with. The rest of the fears that we have throughout our life are learned from our life experiences, or sometimes past lives can get into that too, but I guess that wouldn't really count because we'd be born with those, but not really knowing them. And also too, now I just lost track of what I was saying. So our fears, we're born with two: loud noises and falling, but the rest are learned or downloaded from other people. They're created from us about other people. Now, there are different things or different triggers or cores of our fears. So most every fear we have will fall back to one of these. These is one of the cores. So darkness or loss of control is a fear. So darkness or not being able to see things in front of us, for complete darkness, that a lot of people have the fear of darkness. And that I kind of feel like is a loss of control. Some people have fear of heights or flying. Social rejection. This is a big one because this is what other people think of you. This is the biggest, honestly, I think this is the biggest fear. This is the one that stops us. I mean, if you don't go flying or if you're not in a dark room, that's not going to stop you from living your life. But social rejection has the capacity or has the reality of you stopping you from living your life, because it can stop you from doing things. It can stop you from failing. It can stop you from trying things out. So social rejection also would be the fear of failing, because at the end of the day, if you fail, who cares? Other people. So it just is what other people are thinking. And also too, the fear of snakes or rodents. That's very, very real too. And death and dying. A lot of people are afraid of death and dying. Now, some people say that fear of speaking to large crowds is in here, but that goes under social rejection, because what are you really afraid of? You're going to get up there and you're not going to sound good, or you're not going to be good at it. And so you're afraid of what people are going to think about it, right? So a lot of these fall back to what people are going to think. So if you're scared to step out of your spiritual closet, or if you're scared to start a business, it's going to fall back to social rejection. So that's kind of what we're going to talk to you about today, because the main fear, well, in my life anyways, and I can see a lot of my clients, is social rejection, because we're, death and dying, that's a common fear. Snakes and rodents, common fear. Heights and flying, that's pretty common. Darkness or being in a dark room and not being able to see. But those don't stop you. Now, death and dying can stop you from living. You're so afraid that you're going to die that you don't do anything and you stay super safe. You don't have adventures. But mostly social rejection is what stops you from trying for that job, or making new friends, or telling people who you really are. And that's, I guess, what I really wanted to talk about is because if you want to spiritually grow, spiritual growth comes from inside. And spiritual growth and frequency raises come from you figuring out your shiz and owning your shiz. And a lot of times people don't take these steps or go forward because they're afraid of what people will think. And they're afraid of, for a long time, that's why I didn't step out of the mediumship closet, because I was so afraid of what my religious friends were going to think, or what my kids were going to think, or what my family was going to think. And now I don't care. And luckily I don't care, because look at how much good it's done, or how the readings have helped people. So this is just kind of something I want to talk about, because we create this fear. We create this we tell ourselves a story that some of the time, or most of the time, 90% of the time, isn't even true. So you're creating this story, and I've done this millions of times. Well, what if I do this, and then this happens, and this happens, and then this happens? Or most of the time, like if I go to some family functions when some family members are going to be there, the whole time I'm getting ready for this family function, I will play out these roles of where I have to defend myself or where I have to step into my power. And then we get there, and 9 times out of 10, it doesn't even happen. Doesn't even happen. But I'm just panicked because of the 2 or 3 times that it did happen when I was there before. So we create these stories, these false stories. And so it's a belief that we have, a belief that we create that we need to try and let go of. And it's so crazy how it can control us. Or sometimes fear can be PTSD drawn to, and I will admit that. So if you have a time in your life when you are super, super fearful, and then you try and move on with your life, and your memories go back to that, then that is the PTSD form of fear. But honestly, again, it's something you're creating in your mind because it's already passed, right? It's already passed, it already happened, but you're creating that for the future, or you're creating that system in your mind. And I don't want to get too involved in that, because honestly, some people can't help that. And that is something where it needs counseling or medicine and things like that. And sometimes our fears do. Sometimes our fear can be so bad that it can cause anxiety, and we do need counseling and medication for it. And, lots of people having different things, like different faith crises. Some people need to get through it with some sort of help or some sort of counseling, and that's totally okay. So here's the steps of how it goes too. So it can start as nervousness. You can just be nervous about something, and then it can turn to straight anxiety, dread, desperation, panic, horror, and terror. So I don't think I think maybe one time I've reached terror. When I was little, my dad hid in the shed of my backyard, and I was walking around pretending that I was like some sort of museum. I was taking people on a tour, and my dad made ghost sounds in the shed, and I was so terrified that I ran in the house. I tripped. I was so scared that I was crawling on my hands and knees screaming. So kids can feel terror. And that's the thing too. It changes. Fear can start when you're little, just by certain movies that you're watching, like scary movies. Like my little granddaughter all the time, I scary. So she can just be, just from movies. And that's kind of where it, when you're kids, it starts from movies. And then when you go to school, it's that whole fear of rejection. It's that whole, oh my gosh, am I going to get picked to play on the football team? Or am I going to get picked on, when they pick teams, and you always are nervous if you're going to get picked and stuff like that. And then when you grow up, it's like fear of getting a job, or fear of being, fear of supporting a family. These are all very real. The only thing is sometimes you can create them to be more than they are. Like my husband, he will be driving down, when we're on trips and we're driving down on the highway, he will play out all the things that could happen, so he knows how to correct them before they do. So if the tire blew, or if this happened, he plays it all out. And that's actually a good, that can be one thing. He's telling himself a story that usually doesn't happen, right? Or he's using a coping mechanism that I'm going to talk about later, where you imagine the worst that can happen and think, okay, can I survive that? So it's just fear plays a funny thing in our lives. And the thing is the reason why I want to talk about this so much is because it stops so many of us from being who we truly are. And it stops so many of us from taking that adventure or starting that business or not caring what people think. It stops so many of us from honestly being who we are and being our authentic selves. We're afraid that if we have green hair, people will look at us funny, or we're afraid if we start that business, we're going to fail, or we're afraid that if we tell people we're a medium or we have psychic powers, that they're going to think. And I get on a soapbox about this because I had this fear that people were going to think I was crazy. But yet, this is my soapbox. You look at the religions and the things that they believe are spiritually based about being visited, somebody having a spiritual experience, somebody having, and they teach about spiritual experiences, but yet when you have them, it's taboo. And so I get really kind of frustrated about that. But this is a real fear. I feared so much because there was a lot of fears. One fear is about what people would think. And I had a belief system that I was taught that if I did these things, if I, in the Bible, if I become a seer, I'm going to hell. And I believed in a hell and a heaven, the way that I was taught that hell was brimstone and fire and you're stuck there forever, and heaven's a place that, these different places that's just glorious and wonderful. And if I became a psychic medium, I would be in the brimstones of hell while my family was up at the table in heaven. And so honestly, that stopped me for so long of being a medium. The other things that were scary is, I will admit, and some mediums will disagree with me on this, is there are sometimes scary spirits. I would love to tell you there's not, and it's all in your head, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? I've dealt with them. And so I would be doing you a dishonor if I told you that you are not going to come back with if you're going to have this spiritual awakening, you're going to get some shove back because lower frequencies do not want the frequencies to raise. And so it's not, this line of work no line of work isn't always rainbows and roses or easy peasy lemon squeezy. No line of work that you will ever do is just going to be all rainbows and roses all the time. It's just not. And so there are things that come with being a psychic medium. And yeah, I have been scared to panic and terror from things that I've witnessed or seen. And whether or not I created that with my emotions myself, or whether or not it was a lower frequency, that's up for debate. Everybody has their own thing. But I know I just know I could not have created that. So, and that was my story. Some mediums don't ever deal with anything like that at all, ever. And I know some mediums deal with that all the time. They go into haunted houses and they look for that stuff. And so, because they passed their fear, they know that they are stronger than anything out there that comes through. They know that they are more powerful than anything out there. They know, and they have the confidence in themselves that they can conquer this thing. And I am finally getting to that point as far as people and spirits go. And so, but my fear held me back for so long. I can't even imagine where I would be now if I didn't let these fears stop me when I was younger, because I could have progressed so much faster. But I also believe that there's a timeline for everything. And so this was my time, and it's perfect timing. And I did eventually come out of my fears for that. Now, do I still go into readings fearful? Sometimes I do. Sometimes I think, I have that back feeling, what if I'm wrong? What if spirit doesn't come through? And you know what? It's never happened. This is stories that I'm creating myself. Now, are all readings 100% rainbows or roses? No. There are some ones that I go through that are like pulling teeth, and the information's hard to get, and that just depends on me. But what I'm saying is the fear that I have of this is created in your own head. And the fear of, of people not accepting who you truly are is the main fear that we all carry with us. This is the one of the social acceptance, of being accepted for who we are. And this stops us from doing so many things. It paralyzes us. It paralyzes us, and it makes us not want to try for that job or call that person and build a relationship with that person. I remember when I was, younger, I didn't really know what anxiety was back then. And I just know I had to work through it and process it. A lot of people just bury it. Emotions just get buried, and fear is one of those emotions. You get scared and it turns into anxiety, and you just kind of try and get through that moment, but then you don't go to the core of where that fear comes from. What's causing this? Is it it's one of the five that I read? The one, either the heights, the darkness, the social rejection, the snakes, or the death. Which one is that? Which one does that fall back into? And ask yourself why. And I'll guarantee you, most of them will come from social rejection, because we're so afraid of what others are going to think of us, and it's going to stop us dead in our tracks. I used to tell my kids all the time, do it scared. You got to just do it scared, because that's where you're going to grow. That's where you're going to learn. Of course you're going to be scared. And the fear is not going to go away when you do it. So my very first training that I ever did, of course I was scared, but I did it scared. And the next one, I was pretty scared, but I did it scared. And then I started to get more confident and more confident and more confident. And now my fear about readings is almost completely gone. Unless I look at my schedule and I think, oh, what's this person going to think about me today? Or what's this person? Unless I create these stories that aren't even true. Or if I hear that somebody said something about me, one of my old friends said, so, what do you think about what she's doing now? Or what do you think? My kids get asked all the time, because we did kind of have a religious background when my kids were growing up, and my kids do get asked, well, what do you think about that? I've heard your mom's kind of loopy now. And that does bother me, because not for me, I don't care what they think about me, but I feel bad that it, one of the fears was how I was going to look for my kids. And so, but again, that falls back onto social acceptance, right? So most of all of our fears, I would say 80% of them come back to social acceptance, unless you have a trauma from your childhood, and it can cause some PTSD fears for you. So there also are irrational fears, like fears that are just like, why would you even, that some people think are stupid. And one of them, I do have an irrational fear, and one of it is like a closed shower curtain. I hate it when I go to the bathroom and there's a closed shower curtain. And is it because somebody scared me from behind a shower curtain once when I was little? Maybe. I don't know. But I always have to look behind the shower curtain, because I just have this fear. And that's okay, because you know what? It doesn't stop me from living. It doesn't stop me from going to people's bathrooms, and it doesn't stop me from going to my bathroom. So it's just kind of an irrational thing that doesn't stop you from living your life. That's kind of when it gets into a problem, is when your fear paralyzes you and it stops you from living your life. And that's when you've got to just kind of look at what your triggers are, see what fear stem it comes from, what fear core it comes from, because I guarantee you the number one thing of facing your fears is figuring it out. Figuring out, okay, where does this come from? And this is a trigger, and this is shadow work. And this is what you got to get through to be your authentic self. And if you have been following me or know me, I really, the way you get through a spiritual awakening, all a spiritual awakening is, people think it's an outside thing. It's, getting closer to God or connection to spirit, which it is. But to do that, you got to figure your shit out. You got to figure your stuff out. It's not just something that meditation's going to get you through but meditation will help you start dealing with your thoughts, your traumas, your fears, and it's going to help you work through those. And then you're going to be able to do these things and accept yourself without giving a crap what other people think, and being your authentic self, and dyeing your hair purple if you want to, and getting those tattoos, and just being who you want to be, or being that healer or psychic medium or anything that people you feel like might look down on you. So my thing is you just got to do it. You can't wait till the fear go away. You just got to do it. And you have to remember too that you have a huge spiritual team backing you up. You have a huge spiritual team backing you up. Are you going to get some pushback from people and lower frequencies? Yeah, you are, because they don't want you to be your authentic self. Because when you become your authentic self, you become so powerful, and you help, and it's like a domino effect. You become you, and people are magnets to that, and they love that, and they want to do that too. So they will be around you because you'll be an example to them. So some of the things that you can do to remember and help you with your fear is remember that you are backed by a spiritual team. You have a huge spiritual ancestors. Like, watch Mulan. Her ancestors are watching over her. That stuff is true. And also, that one, I don't even remember, that other Disney one with the Maui ancestors are in that one too. That stuff, your ancestors are so watching over you and guiding you. I would, if you don't know a lot about your ancestors, I would maybe check into them sometimes, or your ancestry or your heritage, and look into it, and because it can be pretty awesome. So remember that you have a spiritual team. Also, if you need to, take a time out. If it's too much for you to deal with, then take a time out. Give yourself some grace. And I say this all the time. Give yourself some grace. Take a time out. Maybe watch a mind-numbing sitcom. Just take a time out. Don't face it. Just let it go for a minute. But know you're going to go back to that. If you are having intrusive thoughts and having all these scary intrusive thoughts coming into your head, I could easily say try and distract yourself, but I've had them, especially when I was a brand new mother. And so, you try and process them, think them through, think, where is this coming from? How can I prevent this? Those are kind of hard. Irrational thoughts or intrusive thoughts. Those are a little harder, but again, they're a story that you're telling yourself that might not even happen, that probably won't even happen, and you need to remind yourself of that. And the only reason it's because I can sit here and tell you, just stop thinking about it, or I can sit here and tell you, distract yourself, but I've been through it, and it's super hard. It's a lot easier said than done. So, and as you're taking a time out, breathe. Breath work is huge. Breath work, I think, is stronger than any kind of plant medicine, any kind of drug. Breath work, breathing is huge. So deep breaths, sometimes that's hard too. All this stuff is sometimes hard, but if you're finding it hard to do this stuff, then that's when we're going to go to the last one, which is seek professional help. Seek professional help, maybe go to a counselor, maybe talk to somebody about some of these fears. Another one is face it head on. Do it scared. Just do it. You get in there, you do it, and you know what? If it turns out to be a disaster, guess what? That's okay. You're still going to live. You're going to be alive at the end of it, and you're going to live through it, and it's going to be something you can talk about later, and it's going to be okay. So face it head on. And this is where it comes into imagine the worst case scenario. What is the worst case scenario? People are going to laugh at you and think you're stupid. Okay. Well, then that's okay, because who are they? Who are they to say that what you're doing is right or not? Right? So imagine the worst case scenario and ask yourself if you can live through that, if that would be something that you could get through. Look at the evidence. This is when you have intrusive thoughts too. Look at the evidence and try and change your story. Look at what evidence is this. Social media will do this all the time. You'll see a news article about someone who passed away, and then you'll have this fear that that's going to happen to you. So just know that, maybe put the phone down. Take a time out. Don't do the scrolling, but look at the evidence and change the story. Start to visualize the story you want. instead of the story you're scared of or the story you're creating, start to visualize the story you want to tell or the story how you want it to play out. And just remember that no one is perfect. That's the no one is perfect one goes up with the other one. Imagine the worst case scenario of people thinking you're stupid. Yeah, that kind of goes with that one. And talk it out. This one goes with counseling and seeking professional help. So a lot of times if your fear is paralyzing you and you cannot live your life or you're having a hard time living your life, then you need to talk to somebody, and you need to maybe seek out counseling and or maybe seek out a friend that can help you and maybe ask them if it's something, just be careful here because I don't want you to seek out a friend and have your friend judge you. And then, if you go to your friend and say, I'm really scared because I'm a psychic medium or I want to be a healer, and your friend kind of laughs at you, I don't want that to affect you because that's just an opinion of somebody else. You really have everything you need inside you. But sometimes the fear can be so bad that you do need a professional to help you through it. And if that's the case, look for ways, seek out help, tell your spirit team you want help. They'll find a way to provide it for you. So the reason why I talked about fear today is because I just see it so many times stopping so many phenomenal people from going forward in their lives, from creating that business, from being scared of doing what they want to do and living a life they want, but mostly from stopping them from being who they truly are. It's so sad that we stop people from being who they truly are. We do as a collective, as a whole, as a population, and we just need to accept people and love people for who they are, as long as they're not hurting you, or as long as that's physically hurting you. Just because they don't want to be let's say they don't want to be a certain religion as you think that that's hurting you. It's really not. It's not hurting you. If they don't want to be the same religion you are, you think it's hurting you because you've been taught a belief that you're not going to be with them in heaven. But that's not true. You don't know if that's true or not. And this is their journey. Let people have their own journeys. Let people go on their own journeys. And this goes with your kids too. It's good to teach them to be good people, but there's going to be a day when they want to go on their own. And you know what? You've provided them with a good compass. You have. So let them take this journey on their own and let other people have their own journey and be happy for people. It's, when people are successful and we get a little jealous sometimes, that just kind of, that's just a mirror of us. It's just telling us, instead of looking at somebody being like, oh my gosh, look at how successful they are. I'm so excited for that. Thank you, universe, for showing me what I can achieve and what I can accomplish. There is enough success out there for everybody. So a lot of fear can stop us from going on adventures and living our lives. Don't instigate that fear into somebody else. Don't make somebody feel like they're not good enough. Don't instigate that fear. Don't let your beliefs stop somebody from living their lives. As long as they're not physically hurting somebody or mentally, mind game abusing somebody, it's their life. It's their journey. Let them go. You gave them, they have their compass and you follow yours. You worry about your own self. I hope you guys like that today. Honestly, fear is the one thing that I know has stopped me in my life, and I see it stopping a lot of people, turning into anxiety. And you know what? It's going to be okay. We're all going to get out of this okay. So, anyways, I love you guys so much. I kind of already talked about the things that are coming up. And I'm kind of taking a back seat this summer, spending time with my family. And you will see more things coming from me in September. But right now, I am going to enjoy the summer with my family. I'm still doing readings. I'm still booked out. But I did just do, podcasts every other Thursday for a little bit. And I kind of cut back on some of my classes. But in in August and September, they will be cutting up. But if you want more content, Patreon's always a good place to start looking. So I love you guys so much, and I will talk to you guys next week. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with others and hope that they enjoy it too.